In this episode, we are going to start building our filter component. The first thing we need to do is to create a set of concatenators for our SQL statement. Under the database directory, which is within the app directory, we're going to create a new one. We're going to call it Concat. Within this directory, we are going to first create the Concat contract class. So Concat contract, and it's going to be an interface. If we hit OK, and what I need to do obviously is to add the namespace, which is going to be up. Then we have database and concat, and this contract will have two methods: public static function concat, which takes statement as first argument and the only argument, and let's quickly add dog blocks to it. It returns string. The argument will also be of a string type. And for the summary, we're going to set concat statement. And then another method, public static function concat first. It takes the statement as well. And dog blocks, pretty much the same, string, and then string for the statement argument, and concat first statement. Now, what these two methods will do? These two methods will basically represent concatenation of the SQL where clause. So if there's, let's say, where ID equals something and something equals this, or something equals that, or and something like this, and so on. So concat first is going to be used in the situations where this concatenating implementation is going to be the first item right after the where clause, and the concat is going to be used when we have already some where conditions before this given one. Okay, let's save this contract, and within a concat directory, we're going to start with a new concatenator. The first one will be concat end, and if we open that one, then we start namespace is fine. This one obviously implements this new contract, so concat contract, and let's add the method stubs. So we have this concat and then concat first. For the concat, we're going to simply return in between a double quote and then our statement. So and the statement that we're passing through. And then for concat first, we simply return statement. We don't have to prepend anything to it because this is going to be placed right after the where in our SQL statement. Okay, so that's our first concatenator done. So that's concat end. Next concatenator is going to be called concat end also, but this time wrap. And if we just quickly remove this space, and again, this one will implement this concat contract, and let's add method stubs here as well. And concat end wrap will have, for the concat method, return in between the double quotes and then we wrap this statement within a set of brackets. So I'm going to use curly brackets to wrap our statement here as well. So that's for the concat, and then for concat first, it's going to be return in between a double quotes. Again, same thing, between a brackets and statement, and that's our concat and concat first for the concat end wrap. This is when we need to wrap actually our statement within a set of brackets. Okay, so that's concat wrap. Then we have concat or, so another class, concat or, and it's going to implement the same interface. So concat contract, let's add method stubs again, and for the concat or, the concat method will return between the double quotes or and then our statement, and for concat first it will simply return statement. So that's this. Now let's save it, close it. The next one we're going to create is going to be concat or wrap. And again, implementing the same interface, concat contract, method stubs. And for the concat method, we're going to return in between a double quotes again, or, and then in between a brackets, statement. And for concat first, return in between the double quotes, within the brackets, we're going to return this statement variable as well. So these are all of our concatenators. Let's now write tests for these concatenators. Under the test unit database, let's create a new directory, call it concat. And within this directory, we're going to start with the concat and test. And it needs to extend test case. And we start with the private property called concat, and it's going to be an instance of the concat end class. Let's import it because we're going to be using here. And then we're going to do protected function setup. We start by calling parent setup, and then this concat equals new concat. And there we go. We don't need brackets because we don't have any constructor there. And let's just add dog blocks to the setup as well. Set up before each test, and it returns void. Okay, so now the setup is ready. We can write our first test, and I'm going to create a few new lines here so we can shift it up a little bit. And the first test will test our concat method on this concat end instance. So public function concat end with concat. And let's make it a test. And we are going to start with the assertion, assert equals, and what we expect this concat method to return will be end, and then in between it backticks books ID equals question mark. And we should receive this when we run this concat method on it with the argument books ID equals question mark. And if it doesn't return this, then we're going to say invalid result for concat and concat. And if we save it and run the test, and I'm going to test just this file, this concat and test. So PHP unit tests, then unit database concat and test. And there we go, one test, one assertion, which is passing. So this is obviously returning the correct string, which is represented by this first argument here. So we're passing basically what we want to add to the SQL statement, and this is going to format it in a proper way. Obviously, it's just appending this specific case, it's just appending this end and a space before the statement that we pass through as an argument. Okay, so this is the first test. Let's go for the second one. Public function again, concat end with concat first. And let's make it a test as well. If we scroll up a little bit, and here again another assertion, assert equals. This time we're expecting simply books ID equals question mark. And we expect this when we run this concat and a concat method with exactly the same statement. So books ID equals question mark. And if it doesn't work, let's just copy this message that we've got here. We're just going to rename the method. It's going to concat. It's not concat method actually. Now we're testing concat first. So concat first, and same for the message here. Why this is returning just this is it's exactly what I explained earlier. If we open this concat end, when this is the first statement straight after the where keyword in our SQL statement, then we obviously don't need to prepend end. Then we just return whatever we want to start the where statement with, in which case it's going to be just what we actually passing through as an argument. Okay, so let's save it and run a test again, and there we go, 2 tests, 2 assertions, all of which are passing, which is great. And that's everything for this one, because obviously we only have 2 methods to test on this class. So we can save it and close it, and we can obviously close this concat end as well. Then the next test is going to be for concat and wrap. So let's create this test here, new class, concat and wrap test. And again, we are going to extend the test case, and we'll start exactly same way as we did before. So private concat. We could probably put it in a parent class, but let's just keep it this way for now. And variable, this one is going to be concat and wrap. So if we just import this class straight away, and then we have again protected function setup. Let's call the parent setup first, and then this concat, let's instantiate this new concat and wrap class. Okay, and let's add the dog blocks again as well. Set up before each test, and it return as void. You obviously don't have to add these dog blocks if you don't feel like within the test. And if we scroll up a little bit, okay, the first test we're going to write here is going to be called public function concat and wrap with concat, and then make it a test. And again, we are starting with the assert equals, and what we're expecting statement starting with end, then within the brackets, because this one's wrapping the statement, books ID equals question mark. That's what we're expecting, and we're expecting this when we call method this concat method on this concat and wrap instance, and we pass through books ID equals question mark. That's what we should get out of this method. Okay, and if that doesn't work, then let's just copy this message from the previous test so that we stay consistent here. Just copy this, can close this class, and this time obviously we having a different class, concat and wrap. So invalid result for concat and wrap concat method. So if we save it and run the test, this time I'm going to use my arrow up to call the previous command that I've been using here. This time I want to test this concat and wrap test. So if we hit return, there we go, 1 test, 1 assertion, and it's passing, so that's great. Let's move to the next method, which is testing the concat first. We can probably just duplicate this one and rename it. So concat and wrap with concat underscore first. Let me just check what we've got for this one. Yeah, that one's fine. So this time what we're expecting is just our statement which we're passing through as an argument within the brackets without end, because it's going to be called on the method concat first, which does not prepend end to it. So concat first if it doesn't return what we're expecting here. So it should wrap, because we're using this concat and wrap class now. For both methods, it should wrap our statement within the set of brackets, and then for just the concat, it should prepend end and a space. Without the for the concat first, it just wraps it within a set of brackets. Okay, save it, and again, let's run the test, and both of them are passing, which is great. Let's close this one and move to the next one. The next one will be called concat or test, and again, let's extend base case. Sorry, not base case, it's not this one, it's test case, and we are going to do the same thing, private concat, which this time is going to be represented by our concat or class. Let's import this class as well, right here at the top, and then again setup, so protected function setup, and then first of all we call parent setup, and then we instantiate our concat or class, a new concat or. Okay, and again, I'm going to add the dog blocks. If you don't want to, don't worry, then set up before each test, and then return void. And after the setup, the first test, and again, let me scroll up. The first test will test our concat method on the instance of this concat or class. So public function concat or with concat. And let's make it a test again. And another assertion, this assert equals, and the statement should be or, and then our statement which we pass through as an argument. So books ID equals question mark. And then we go for this concat method, and we passing through books ID equals question mark. And if it fails, again, I'm going to open the previous test, just copy this message and paste it in. Just make sure that we obviously rename the class instance. This is going to be concat or with the concat method. If we save it, now run a test. This time we testing concat or test. And there we go, one test, one assertion, which is passing. Great. Next one. Again, I'm going to duplicate it actually. Same way as we did before. So duplicating this test and renaming it, this time concat first. And it should be rather than or, without this or, just the statement which we are passing through. And it's going to be concat first method. And if it fails, the message should also say concat or with the concat first. So if we save it and run a test, two tests, two assertions, both of are passing. Great. So that's done as well. I'm going to remove this redundant space here. Save it, and I think, have I removed it from here? No, I haven't. Let's just clean it up a little bit. Okay, so the last test is for the concat or wrap class. So new class, concat or wrap test. And again, extends test case, all the same stuff that we've done with the other classes, private concat property, which this time is going to be represented by concat or wrap. There we go. Let's import it again. And let's do protected function setup. We start with the parent setup, and then this concat equals new concat or wrap. Okay, and again, doc blocks set up before each test. Return void, and a few new lines, which we're going to remove right after. Public function concat or wrap with concat. And again, it's a test. So we start with the assertion. So this assert equals again, and we're expecting, if I scroll up a little bit, we're expecting or space, and then within the brackets our statements. So it's going to be books ID equals question mark, and we expect this when we run this concat method with the statement books ID equals question mark. And again, I'm going to copy it from the previous test, and we're going to take this, the name of this class, this some concat or wrap, and then obviously concat method. So let's see if that's what we're going to get. Basically this first argument, if we're going to get this when we run this concat method on the concat or wrap with this books ID equals question mark statement. Let's run this. This time is concat or wrap test, and there we go, that passes, so that's great. Let's duplicate it, rename the test concat first, and we run in the method concat first now with the same statement, but this time we should receive only the same statement that we're passing through as an argument within a set of brackets without this or in a space at the beginning. So and obviously we need to amend this message here. It's going to refer to the concat first method on this class. So save it, run the test again, two tests, two assertions, all of which are passing. Okay, let's remove this redundant space here at the bottom. Sorry, I was rushing a little bit through this, but it's as you obviously saw it's quite repetitive, pretty much the same thing. It's just the result is slightly different that we're testing for. Obviously, if it's a little bit too fast for you, please make sure that obviously you pause it and do it in your own pace. So that's it in this video. In the next one, we're going to start working on our query classes.